I mean, with artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. You know those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and the holy water, and he's like, yeah, he's sure he can control the demon. Didn't work out. I mean, with artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon.
Welcome, everyone, to the Hurting Humanity channel. You may those words from Elon Musk in the past that artificial intelligence is summoning the demon, but you may have thought in your head, well, that's just kind of, using words and throwing them around and joking with everybody about summoning demons. No. Literally, artificial intelligence is summoning demons. And when you biblically look at the Bible and how often it references spiritual warfare, how often the Bible talks about forbidding mediums and forbidding witchcraft and sorcery. Well, that's what's happening now with technology and artificial intelligence. Of course, it's all been sugar-coated onto us with different twists of how it's about technology and these words that they use about intelligence and advancements in science. These are all things they've done to pretty much condition us for what they're about to do. Now, even when they make mention of artificial intelligence, they know themselves what's about to happen because they're doing this and strategically have been doing it for quite some time, which is normalizing technology in our day-to-day lives, not just to make us lazier and less dependent, but to make us trust in technology, which is one of the big things that they're doing, is they're making man lose trust and love for one another, but have trust and love in technology. Technology knows all the answers. Technology doesn't pass judgment. These are all deceptions that have been used in our day-to-day lives. And we're seeing more and more articles out there about what is now known as quantum artificial intelligence. Even Forbes just released an article talking about quantum artificial intelligence being closer than you think. And you might say, well, what's the difference between artificial intelligence and quantum artificial intelligence? Well, quantum computing, you may have heard in the past, I've covered it, and I will play the clips for you again because you need to be aware of these giant quantum computers. And when you look up what giant quantum computers require, they require very cold environments. And think about a lot of movies in the past that we've seen. Almost every single movie, from the Poltergeist films to Stranger Things to ghost movies, movies about demonic possession and ghosts, it's always a cold presence in the room, right? Even in movies like The Sixth Sense, where the smoke comes out of his mouth when spirits or demons are close, it seems that there's a cold presence, that the temperature seems to drop, right? Well, have you noticed that these quantum computers run on very cold? It has to be very, very cold for them to run. And have you heard about this thing with the climate where we need to cool the earth? Now start connecting the dots with what they're doing. And I will show you the clips in 1 second. If you haven't seen them, if you've seen them before, you need to see them again because you need to have an understanding about what they're trying to do. And this illusion of computers and artificial intelligence, what we're really talking about here is entities, demonic entities. And as crazy as it sounds, even these people that we look at, like Elon Musk, like Gordy Rose, these people who are looked at in our society as very, very intelligent people who are talking about the technology of quantum computers, it's very interesting that the wording they constantly use and they constantly throw at us has to do with demonic entities because they're telling you this stuff and it just goes over everybody's head. They're like, wow, quantum computing? I could do things quicker on my phone? Oh, I could talk without even having to touch a dial button on the phone? What? Huh? Little demons? Entities? What? I don't get it. Huh? I'm too distracted. That's exactly what they want as they reveal this to us. Quantum computing, an entirely new way of processing information when combined with AI, has the potential, without exaggeration, to bring about a new computing revolution. Transformation may be an understatement. And there's that word again. This is from the Forbes magazine article on these quantum artificial intelligence beings that they're working on bringing into our day-to-day lives. Now, they already have this technology ready to go. It's pretty much just a countdown at this point to whatever chaos they have planned. But we know when they talk about things like CERN and they talk about smashing particles together and opening black holes, it goes over everybody's head and they just hear that stuff and they think, wow, these guys know more than I do. I better not question physics or engineering because what they're doing seems to be important. Yet this is all spiritual. They're trying to bring over what's on the other side. When God separated and put a veil up, they're trying to bring that over here. And through the movies and the programming over the years, we've seen how often they've used repetition when it comes to demons needing cold air and needing it to be very, very cold, below freezing for them to survive. And we've heard the same about quantum computers and how they can only thrive in very, very cold environments. On top of that, we've also had these trigger words embedded in our minds about superpowers, right? Think about how many things we've heard about, oh, what's your superpower? How many movies about superheroes that nobody really would ever want to watch continue to get normalized in our society? Well, when you look at these articles about quantum artificial intelligence, they all say the same thing. Quantum AI will use new quantum designed algorithms with superpowers that result in much more powerful AI models. And if you don't know what that means, here's Gordy Rose, one of the masterminds of the quantum computer, who probably will flag this video because he has in the past, because he's got no marbles, aka no Wables. But anyway, listen to the horror show that they're about to inflict on humanity.
So, I'm the President of the United States. So I received this message from the heavens. So my microwave dish, my SETI dish, finally captures something. And what it says is, in 50 years, or 13 years, we're coming to your planet. You gotta be ready. Now just imagine what would happen if that happened. A super intelligent alien race beamed down a message to all of us Earthlings saying, we're coming July 13th, 2030, and boy, you better be ready because the mothership is landing right on the front lawn of the White House or wherever you wanted to land on that day. The amount of resources that would be marshaled to try to figure out what to do would encompass the whole world. AI is just like that. So when this thing that I'm talking about happens, it's going to be exactly the thing that you're thinking about those super intelligent AIs. So the one thing I can tell you is they're not going to be like us. So alien means, different. These things that we're building are not going to be people. They might be really smart, they might be really good at all sorts of different things, but they're not going to be like us. They're going to be aliens. And they're going to be, I'm sorry to say, way smarter than every single person in this room. So this is an attitude that some are having, this emerging alarmism about the way this is going to go. But these words, demons, doesn't capture the essence of what's happening here. I don't know if any of you are turn-of-the-century weird fiction fans, but there's this guy named H.P. Lovecraft, who's a very famous American weird fiction author. And he espoused a view which is called cosmicism. And the essence of cosmicism is cosmic indifference. So what he was saying is basically, yes, there are these massively intelligent entities out there, but they're not good, they're not evil. They just don't give a shit about you even in the slightest. The same way that you don't care about an ant is the same way they're not going to care about you. And these things that we're summoning into the world now are not demons, they're not evil, but they're more like the Lovecraftian great old ones. There are entities that are not necessarily going to be aligned with what we want. So this transition is really, really massively important for our entire species to navigate. And going back to that thing that Sam Harris was saying, nobody is paying attention. This thing is happening in the background while people bicker about politics and what's going to be in the healthcare plan in the US. And underneath it all is this rising tsunami that, if we're not careful, is going to wipe us all out. But before I do that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about quantum computers and why people care so much about them. There are literally tens of thousands of some of the brightest people in the world today trying to build these machines and understand them. And I'm going to tell you why. In my last 15 years of working on this type of stuff, I found that scientists divide up into two categories of zealots about this field. The first half are people who are absolutely entranced by the physics of these things. This quote is from a respectable scientist, in fact, one of the founders of this field, that may look a little strange to you who don't follow theoretical physics, but there is a very clear prediction that our most successful theory of nature makes, and that is that there are an enormous number, mind-bogglingly large number, of parallel realities, as real as this one, that have different consistent histories. So imagine a world where all of the laws of physics as we know them are obeyed, but different decisions were made along the way. Different decisions at the level of tiny microscopic particles, different decisions all the way up to what you chose to eat for lunch and whether you chose to come to this session or not. Quantum mechanics makes a very specific prediction that all of those are as real as the thing that you remember. And this is bizarre because we don't see those other things. But science has reached the point now where we can build machines that exploit those other worlds. And quantum computers are perhaps the most exciting of all of these that we have within, or almost within, our grasp right now. So people from a physics background love this. They want to understand the world. They want to understand the universe, how it all works. There's another type of person who tends to come from the computer science side that's like, yeah, okay, that's all great. But there's a different thing going on here, which is just as exciting, if not more, and that these machines that supposedly can do this wild stuff, let's forget about how they work, if you could build one, could solve problems that you could never, ever solve with any computer of the sort that we build. If you took every single atom of silicon in the world and made the most sophisticated conventional Intel-style processor that you could build, there are problems we know of that I could write down on a sheet of paper that you could never, ever, ever solve with that thing, that you could with this kind of machine. So that's very exciting. Humans use tools to do things. If you give humans a new kind of tool that can do things that you couldn't otherwise do, imagine the possibilities. So you may think, well, this is all fine and dandy, but aren't these things in the realm of theory and speculation, kind of in the same regime as other futuristic things you may have heard of, which may be allowed by the laws of physics, but aren't here yet? That's not true. There are, in fact, many of these machines deployed now in openly available research centers following the model that was used to introduce supercomputers to the world. They're too big and ornery and difficult to operate to put in your home, too expensive also, but you can give them to a place which will manage them as a shared resource that will offer that service to the world. And there are two of these now. One of them is at the University of Southern California. So these types of computers now are being thought of in the same way. They're not terrifically powerful yet, but they're doing something completely different than what your computer does. And that thing is light flight. It gives these computers access to these new resources, maybe you could call them parallel universes, in order to do something that you couldn't otherwise do. Steve Jurvetson has been a longtime friend and investor in the company, and for those of you who don't know him, he's a Silicon Valley investor who's probably the smartest VC that I know of, and certainly the one that's the most attuned to technological trends. He's He's on the board of SpaceX, Tesla, Synthetic Genomics, which is Craig Venter's company that's trying to build artificial life, and D-Wave, and that's it. And this is his particularly poetic way of framing the difference between the machines we build and conventional computers. This is what they look like. There are two of them. These are from our lab in Burnaby in British Columbia. From the outside, they look like giant black monoliths, big metal boxes, about 10 feet on a side, 12 feet tall. And they are powered, they have a fridge inside them, a refrigerator that cools these chips to almost absolute zero. Just a wisp, a fraction of a degree above absolute zero. Hundreds of times colder than interstellar space. Amongst the coldest and most isolated and extreme conditions that humans have ever been able to engineer. These fridges, interestingly enough, which are called pulse tube dilution refrigerators, have a thing called a pulse tube, which emits a sound roughly once per second, which sounds eerily like a heartbeat. So if you have the opportunity to stand next to one of these machines, it is an awe-inspiring thing, at least for me. It feels like an altar to an alien god. They really are impressive machines. At the heart of this big box is a tiny chip about the size of your thumbnail. And on this chip resides all of the wonder and magic that makes this thing go. I'm not going to describe in any mathematical detail how it all works, but let me give you an analogy. In quantum mechanics, there's this concept that a thing can exist in two states which are mutually exclusive at the same time, quote unquote. And I'm using those words because the English language was developed before we had concepts to describe what these things actually are doing. But I'm going to give you a roundabout way of understanding this. Imagine that there really are parallel universes out there, and now imagine you have two that are exactly identical in every respect, all the way out to the horizon as far as we can see, down to the last little atomic detail of every single thing, with only one difference. And that's the value of a little thing called a qubit on this chip, which is a contraction of quantum bit. And that qubit is very much like a bit or a transistor in a conventional computer. It has two distinct physical states, which we call 0 and 1 for bit. In the conventional computer, these are mutually exclusive. That device is either one or the other, never anything else. In a quantum computer, that device can be in this strange situation where these two parallel universes have a nexus, a point in space where they overlap. And when you increase the number of these devices, every time you add one of these qubits, you double the number of these parallel universes that you have access to, until such time when you get to a chip like this, which has about 500 of these bits, you have something like 2 to the 500th power of these guys living in that chip.
So when you hear somebody like that at a TED Talk, okay, when you hear somebody like that who is one of the big names in Silicon Valley, these people are unregulated for a reason. And there's also a reason you never hear about these people in the public eye. What do we hear about? We hear about nonsense. We hear about these celebrities, who's dating who. But you never hear about these psychopaths who are wielding this type of what they call technology. But these people are really servicing or are really just acting out as mediums here, who are trying to summon and bring these things over, and they openly admit it. Listen to the things that he says. Nobody would ever understand what he's even saying. He's talking about little entities, little demons, talking about what's inside these chips. Do we ever think about what these things are? They're like, here's a phone, here's just a little chip, and you're like, I don't know what this is, right? Then we don't ever talk about electricity and frequencies, right? We never talk about Satan being the prince of the air, as the Bible mentions. So these are all things that people need to be aware of as they come closer and closer to conditioning us to be prepared for quantum artificial intelligence, on top of the fact that we already have quantum computers. Nobody knows how any of this stuff works because this is all spiritual. This stuff is being, and they laugh at it. They dismiss it. People will be like, listen to this guy. He thinks that like computers, technology has to do with spirits and demons, etc., because it's above their understanding. All of it's above their understanding. They can't even explain the made-up science that they try to use to tell you why this stuff is normal, how this stuff is working, with it, what's going on with computer chips, how they're speeding things up here, there, everywhere. They just nod and say yes, just like they nodded and said yes when they were asked to stick poison inside of their bodies. They'll continue to nod and say yes to whatever they're told, and eventually, of course, we know that'll end up being with the mark of the beast, which is what we're headed towards with technology. So they're telling us that this is getting closer and closer. They use trigger terms like superpowers, like transformations. Remember the videos that I've done in the past on transformation? Rihanna, all these celebrities constantly using the word transform, because what they're talking about is transforming you and connecting you with this type of technology, which would essentially be you using your flesh to summon and invoke your temple, your body, to bring this technology into your body, right? And this technology is really going to be deities, which you're summoning into your body, into your temple. So a lot of it's over a lot of people's heads. But I mean, we can look at all the stuff too with the cooling of the earth. These are not coincidences of what they're trying to do, what they're hell-bent on doing, the destruction of humanity, but bringing over and summoning what's on the other side. Because the basis for all of their rituals, yes, we always look at their rituals and we say what? We say the stuff with the children, how disgusting and depraved they are. But ultimately, when they perform all these acts, they're doing it to summon entities and bring entities over from the other side, to be under demonic possession. Of course, most people don't believe that's real because the reality that they believe in has all been formulated through the television, the news, etc., and the school system to make you believe in things that don't actually exist, when that stuff actually exists. And any Christian out there should be aware of it, because the Bible speaks about spiritual warfare. It speaks about what's really going on, but Christians continue to live in this world and be of this world, and they refuse to believe that this stuff is actually real, and they've been trained, of course, to dismiss it all as conspiracy mumbo jumbo. But the fact of the matter is, this is what we're headed towards, so be aware and be prepared. I thank you guys for being here again. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you as always, and your families.